Good one. If you are corona anxious, then you are absolutely not alone. There's millions of us who are getting a little bit concerned about the situation, whether it's our health, other people's health, or the economic situation, or the general meltdown of great leadership. But in this video, I'm going to talk about some fantastic, natural, free, and easy ways to become cool as a cucumber, and happy as a lark, and strong as an ox. And towards the end of the video, I'm going to show you something that is so easy, so simple, and so natural, and you should be doing all the time, that is fantastic for your health. So, what is this special thing you're going to talk about, Colin, that is going to make us so healthy? So I'm going to begin not on the subject I'm going to talk about, but something slightly off but has some relevance. And that is our evolution, how we've got here, how we are social animals. And it's incredibly important to remember we are social animals. In the animal kingdom, we're definitely not the strongest, we're not the fastest, we're not the best swimmers, but we've managed to survive all this time. And a lot of it is to do with teamwork. So evolution provided us with a whole lot of hormones that reward us when we are empathetic, when we are collaborative, when we are kind, and when we are social. And these are great things. They're oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, all of these great hormones that make us social to help us survive and our ancestors survive. So our drive in evolution has been towards being social. Now, when we swim against the current and we are forced to be unsocial, it can wreak havoc with our health. It can also make us grumpy and anxious and not very happy. So how do we combat this situation? So back in 1915, there was a guy called Walter Bradford Cannon, and he was the first scientist really to document what we now know as the fight and flight response. And we all know what a fight and flight response. If you're out on a jog, for example, and you hear this huge Rottweiler behind a fence start barking and growling at you as you go past, and you go, thank goodness he's behind the fence, and then suddenly you realize he's leapt the fence and he is in pursuit of you and your buttocks. You can hear him growling, you can hear him barking, and you can hear his nails on the pavement coming after you. You will then realize what a fight and flight response feels like. Your heart will accelerate almost to actually jumping out of your rib cage. You will start sweating like crazy. The blood will divert from your stomach and all your digestive system into your muscles so you can run faster. And then you've got a choice. You can either leg it and hopefully you can jump over another fence, or you can turn around and take on the Rottweiler, which I wouldn't suggest. But you definitely get the feeling of fight and flight. So sweaty, panicky, and this nauseous feeling in your gut because all blood has disappeared from your visceral organs. So later on, in around the 30s, there was another scientist called Cellier who described something called the GAS, which is the General Adaptation Syndrome. And that was a similar effect, but on a more chronic level. So we get the fight and flight response, but it's what a lot of us experience now. It's things that are the fight and flight response, but it seems to go on forever. And one of the reasons is that there isn't a dog jumping over the fence and chasing after us. There's just our minds working on all the worst possible case scenarios that are going to happen to us over the next week, month, years. And it's not good for us because it's the same hormonal response as we've had with the dog chasing us. And this was the first documentation really which is more known as less fight and flight and more the stress response. So about 30 years after Cellier discovered or described the general adaptation response, which is the stress response, Dr. Herbert Benson, discovered that there was actually the converse of the stress response. There was something which would make us feel fantastic and calm and happy and pump out great hormones like oxytocin and serotonin. And he called this the relaxation response. And it really is the converse. So instead of your heart rate building up and becoming rapid, it calms down and your heart rate can really drop down. The blood moves from your muscles to your viscera, so to all your vital organs. You stop sweating, you're calm. All of these responses are controlled by our autonomic nervous system, or sometimes called the ANS. And the ANS is autonomic, so it's not in our conscious control. So things like your heartbeat carry on whether you think about them or not. If we had to think about our hearts beating and consciously making it beat the whole time, firstly we'd be very busy and we'd also get very little sleep. So there's many parts of our responses that are completely under the autonomic nervous system, so they are unconscious. Now the autonomic nervous system is then split into 3 different branches. We're just going to talk about 2 of them now. One is the parasympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system and the sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system. So the sympathetic branch is basically synonymous with our fight and flight, and parasympathetic is synonymous with our relaxation response. Because all of this happens pretty unconsciously, it's quite difficult to get control of any of it. But nature, in its wisdom, has left us a back door, a way to get in. So if you can think of one part of your body or the functioning of your body that is not only conscious but also unconscious, or not only unconscious but conscious, what would it be? It's breathing. It's breathing. And this is our back door into how we can control, in part, our autonomic nervous system and try and move from sympathetic to parasympathetic, so from a stress response to a relaxation response. So breathing and breath work has become incredibly popular in the last 15 to 20 years because it is so good at improving your health and your mental state. But it actually has been used in Eastern cultures for thousands and thousands of years. And the yogis, pranayama, breathing, Tai Chi, Buddhists, meditation, all of these interventions make you feel calm, they make you feel happy, they make you resilient, they move you into a healing mode, which is your parasympathetic mode. One particular group of people who are absolute experts in breath work and particularly breath holding are free divers. These are guys who go underwater on one breath, either depth or length or time, but they are breath hold experts. And they have really engaged in the science of breath work and breathing and relaxation. So I'm going to give you a very, very brief introduction to the physiology of what's going on in our bodies when we breathe. So we have the atmosphere outside, and that is mainly made up of nitrogen and oxygen. And the bit that is interesting for us is oxygen, because we take it into our lungs, we transfer it from our lungs into the bloodstream. It then gets transferred around the body, and the oxygen, which is attached to the hemoglobin of our red blood cells, then gets released to tissues. The tissues use it for energy, and the byproduct of that energy production is something called carbon dioxide, which then goes back into the bloodstream, eventually comes back up to the lungs. There's a gaseous exchange again in the alveoli of the lungs, and we breathe out carbon dioxide. So in the early days of freediving and for novice onlookers of freediving, when freedivers were doing huge breathe-ups and lots of breathing that almost looked like hyperventilation, people thought that actually what they were doing was just trying to pack their blood with oxygen. And the more oxygen you could pack into your blood, the longer you could hold your breath. This turned out not really to be true, because our blood, even at a resting state at this moment, is between 97 and 99% saturated. The freedivers realized actually the more important effect was to use breathing to go into a relaxation mode, so to lower the heartbeat, to move the blood from the peripheral parts of the body into the visceral parts, and particularly into the vital organs like the brain and the lungs and the heart. So they became experts at using almost yogic techniques of breathing to relax the body. And this is what this is all about, this breathing technique, which is where you're using breathing to go from your sympathetic to your parasympathetic mode. So there's something slightly counterintuitive going on in our bodies with all this gaseous exchange. And freedivers are particularly aware of this phenomena. So when the oxygen is bound to the hemoglobin, it then disappears off in the bloodstream round to release the oxygen to all the vital tissues. But if your carbon dioxide concentration in your blood becomes very low, the hemoglobin is incredibly reluctant to let go of that oxygen. It hangs onto it, and often your body can get starved of oxygen. So if you hyperventilate, what goes on is that you take in lots and lots of oxygen, but you also breathe out lots and lots of carbon dioxide, and you expel so much carbon dioxide that the carbon dioxide levels in your blood drop. Now, with that low carbon dioxide level, the hemoglobin won't let go of the oxygen, and then you starve your tissues. And it's why when you hyperventilate, firstly, you're going into a sympathetic response. You're going into your sympathetic stress response, but also you start feeling woozy and lightheaded, and that is because your brain is being starved of oxygen because the hemoglobin won't let go of it. So let's talk about breathing techniques, and there are many, many, many of them. There's all the yogic ones, the meditation ones. There's things like Wim Hof. There's ways of breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth, and vice versa. There's doing box end breathing, so you're holding your breath at each end of your breath. There are many, many ways of doing it, but I'm just going to simplify it massively so you can decide on what you would like to do, just using some physiological effects. The first is that we want to not hyperventilate, because hyperventilation will take us into the stress response. For example, we have a thing called a minute volume, and it's a very simple formula, which is basically the amount of air you take into your lungs and times the frequency you breathe during a minute. So if you're taking in 500 milliliters into your lungs on each breath, and you're breathing 12 times a minute, your minute volume would be 6 liters. Now, what we don't want to do is, in our breathing techniques, is to exceed that normal minute volume, otherwise you end up hyperventilating. So we can change a couple of the parameters. The first is we can change the frequency, so we take it from 12 breaths per minute down to 6 or 8, but it means we can increase the volume of each breath, and we do that by using abdominal and thoracic breathing. Big breaths in, big breaths out, but the frequency is much reduced. The other thing is that when we breathe in, we tend to speed up the heart, and when we breathe out, we tend to slow it down. So the general principle is that we breathe out longer than we breathe in. And an easy way to do this is to breathe out twice as long as you breathe in. So you can take a breath in for 3 seconds and out for 6. So the proportions means that your heart is slowing down. A little bit of 3 seconds of your heart speeding up a little bit and 6 seconds of it slowing down. Now you can take this, as you practice, you can take this longer, so you can do a 4-8, a 5-10 or a 6-12, it's up to you. So in the next part of the video, I'm just going to go into a very quick and easy way of doing abdominal breathing, or belly breathing as they call it, to invoke your parasympathetic and your relaxation response reflex. Okay, welcome back, and we're going to do a little bit of breathing technique here. Very simple, very straightforward, and we're going to just draw on many of the different practices, but I'm just going to keep it super simple for you guys to do. As I said earlier on in the video, all of these systems are controlled by your autonomic nervous system, which is automatic. These are things that happen unconsciously, and that breathing was nature's back door, really, that you could access the autonomic nervous system and take at least a little bit of control over it. And breathing is the back door. There is another back door that scientists have discovered, and that comes from our ancient evolution. So we have a thing called a diving reflex, or dive reflex, or mammalian dive reflex. So the mammalian diving reflex happens in pretty much all mammals, but the aquatic mammals are absolute experts at it. So anything like a dolphin or a seal or a sea otter or a whale have this mammalian dive reflex. And we as humans also have it, even if it's on a much lesser scale. And the way we invoke the mammalian dive reflex is by wetting around our faces or into our nose, particularly with cold water. Cold water is key. The colder the water, the more effect we have with this mammalian diving reflex. And the other way is to hold your breath. And if you combine the two, if you wet your face and you hold your breath, you get this mammalian diving reflex. And the diving reflex is very, very similar to the relaxation response. That is your second hack into the autonomic nervous system. So if you're feeling really, really stressed, very cold water on your face, hold your breath for 15-20 seconds and you will experience the mammalian diving reflex. I'm on my couch here because I'm going to show you some abdominal breathing technique, which is very simple, and it's a sort of culmination of lots of different ones, and you can actually just experiment with what you feel most comfortable with. The key really is to do long, deep, slow breaths. Make sure that you breathe out twice as long as you breathe in, and be very conscious of your breath. So one way to become quite mindful of your breath is to concentrate on its movement. And one way to do that is to breathe in through your nose and feel that the air is slightly cooler going in through your nose into your lungs, and then on the way out it's a little bit warmer, and you become very aware of the breath going in and out. And you know it's warm air coming out because if you ever wear glasses and they're a bit dirty, you just go onto your glasses and it condensates because you've got warm air on there, and you can clean your glasses. So very briefly, if I'm going to demonstrate a little bit sitting down here, just get into a comfortable position, and you really want to start by breathing in and pushing out. Put your hand on your stomach here and have your fingers just touching on your tummy. And when you breathe in, you want to separate your fingers as much as you can. So what you do is you take a breath in, and the fingers come back together. So each abdominal breath, you're pushing your stomach out as far as you can, spreading these fingers. So this is your inhalation is your contraction, but your inhalation is the contraction of all the muscles of your respiratory pump, so the intercostals and your diaphragm. When you exhale, it's all about just letting go. Don't push air out, don't excessively try and overbreathe, don't do anything that's really trying to exhale too much. All you're doing is letting your all the muscles that you've used to inhale just relax. Everything goes back into their resting position. So your technique will be a combination of abdominal and then chest breathing, which I've showed you. And the other part of the technique is just the timing. So you're going to breathe out twice as long as you breathe in. And you just do it for 2 or 3 minutes. Very simple. So I'm just going to lie here. And if you find somewhere comfortable, it's better to be lying down. Get me cushion. So put your one hand on your abdomen, one on your ribs, and you can either use your nose or your mouth. Freedivers tend to use their mouths for both in and out because very often they have a mask and they can't breathe out or in through their nose. So they tend to stick to the technique where if you've got a mask on, you have to use your mouth. But it's up to you. One thing I would say is when you're trying to control your breath on the exhale, it's much easier to do it through your mouth and then just purse your lips. So you're going, and if you want to slow it down even more, you just purse your lips even more. But breathing in happily to do through your nose. So I'm going to do in and out through my mouth. So we start with the abdomen and we're going to do it for a count of 4. Then into the chest. So you start with your abdomen as much as you can. When that's full, you move up to your chest as much as you can. You can hold it for a second at the top and then breathe out for twice as long as you breathe in. So let's try it again. We're going to breathe in for 4. So I did promise you something at the beginning of this video that is a technique that is incredibly good for us in general, but is particularly good at this time of coronaviruses. And it is something called nitric oxide. So it has amazing benefits and for several reasons. First, it's vasodilatory, so it means the capillaries and the blood vessels around your lungs dilate, so there's more blood that can go to your lungs. It's also bronchodilatory, so your lungs actually and the alveoli also expand and get a greater surface area, which means the gaseous exchange is much more efficient. So if you've got a lung issue, which often is the case with coronavirus, this can really help you to breathe and to take in oxygen and get rid of carbon dioxide. It's also used actually for ventilating premature babies to help them breathe and to help the gaseous exchange. The other really important part of nitric oxide is that it's antifungal, antibacterial, and specifically it's antiviral. And what it does is disrupt the replication cycle of the virus. Now, the amazing thing is that your body actually produces nitric oxide. And it produces it in your nasal cavities and in your paranasal sinuses. So in your sinuses in your nose and in your nose itself, we're constantly producing nitric oxide, which is fantastic. The important technique is really, because we're producing this in our nasal cavities, this nitric oxide, it's really important to nose breathe. So we breathe in through our nose and out through our mouth. And actually the guys who originally discovered the effects of nitric oxide and the fact that we produce it were Nobel Prize winners in the mid-90s, and their recommendation is inhalation through the nose to take in nitric oxide and exhalation out of the mouth so as not to lose any, because it's all in our nasal cavities. There's another technique, which is you take a normal breath out, you pinch your nose, I can talk like this, but it sounds a bit weird. But because you're pinching your nose, the nitric oxide is being produced, so it's concentrating in your nasal cavities. But when you let go of your pinch, you immediately take a deep breath in. And it's really important because very often if you've held your breath for a little while, your first response when you start breathing again is to breathe out first. So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure after you've pinched your nose that you breathe in and then out through your mouth. Another lot of research found that humming, hum a tune, increases the production of nitric oxide by up to 50% more. So you can hum, pinch your nose, produce nitric oxide, take it into your lungs. It's fantastic. Vasodilatory, bronchodilatory, antifungal, antibacterial, antiviral. Just make sure you get it in there. So that's my little trick. Feel free to go and Google the effects of nitric oxide. It's a fantastic gas. We produce it ourselves, humming and breathing in through our nose, out through your mouth, and pinching your nose is an incredibly effective way of actually getting nitric oxide into your lungs, which is great for you. If you like these videos, please click the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Please, if you know any of your friends who might be interested in these subjects, please forward it to them or post them a link. So the Shine Model website, which is a membership site, was launched at the end of 2019. And it is a membership site, a paid membership site. But in light of what a debacle 2020 has turned out to be, I thought it would be really nice just to offer the membership completely free for the whole of 2020. So if you go to the Shine website, you can use a coupon code, which I will post in the description below, and you can use that coupon code to get the full membership. It's called the Eagle membership, to the Shine Model for the whole of 2020. Please get on there, please have a look around. There's a forum, please post stuff. There's lots of there's these videos, there's courses, there's blogs, and I really want to build the community in the Shine Model site. So feel free to go down there. Thank you for watching the video. It's great to see you. I hope everything's okay. I'm in Milan, and today actually is the first day that things have really started to change. So shops are opening. Really important for me is the hairdressers are back. I couldn't be happier. And I hope that the rest of the world will slowly follow suit. Eventually the travel bans will be off, and we'll be able to get out there. So stay safe, stay happy, stay empathetic, be kind, social distance, use a mask, wash your hands, all of those things we know all about.